The NBA has one of the strongest global fan bases among all the major sports. With its rise in popularity in Europe, Latin America, and Asia, the game of basketball has truly become a sport popularized around the world. And with such a large NBA fan base, that comes with it a lot of debates, takes, and opinions from so many differing views that fall on such a wide spectrum. And none can be better and some of the wildest NBA hot takes across NBA fandom, some that are so out there that you might be wondering, what was this person on, while others could be perceived as hot, but just might actually prove to be true. Well, in today's video, we're going to be going over some of your hot takes that you've left on the channel and my reaction to said takes. If you're new to the channel and you enjoy the content, consider subscribing, as it would mean a great deal to me in helping grow this newly created channel. And right now, about 90% of you watching are not subscribed to the channel, and in return, I'll be providing more NBA content like this all season long. Now, I had asked a few days ago in the community post for you guys to send me your wildest NBA hot takes, and I do this for my Bulls channel as well. It's actually one of my favorite videos to make, as it engages you, the audience, and I like to see where people's heads are at regarding the season or anything historical related. So to get us kicked off, our first take comes to us from Calvin G. Brandon Ingram is better than Zion Williamson. Oh, I like this one. This is one of those takes that by most is probably considered to be very hot, given the hype around Zion, but it honestly is not that far off. I mean, here's the thing. I always say that availability is key in the NBA. And I know Ingram has had his own issues with injuries and being out of the lineup, but it's been nothing like Zion, who has been in the league since 2019 and hasn't even played 100 career games yet. And the other thing I'll say is that Zion is one of the more hyped players in the league because of all the attention and exposure of him coming into the league as a highly touted prospect, a generational level talent, a player that could change a franchise. And Brandon Ingram, on the other hand, has kind of been overlooked to an extent. Yes, he was a top prospect going into college and obviously was the number 2 pick overall, so the hype surrounding him was there, but not to the level of Zion Williamson. And I usually think that Ingram is one of the more underrated players in the league, with his gifted scoring ability both in getting to the rim as well as being an efficient jump shooter in the mid-range. He's even added three-point shooting to his repertoire, although he's shooting threes at a much lower volume than most of the league. A good passer, decent rebounder. I mean, you could argue he's the number 1 scoring option on the Pelicans. But despite all of this, I still think Zion Williamson has the advantage when assessing which player is better. Zion, again, when healthy, is just such a freak athlete with his ability to body guys in the post despite only being 6'6". He's versatile in that he can play and guard multiple positions and is just as good as Ingram when it comes to scoring and rebounding. He's also slightly more efficient than Ingram is as well, both from the field and also for their overall efficiency rating across all metrics. It is close though. It's not like Zion is leaps and bounds better than Ingram like some people might think. Next, we've got David C's. Luka will end his career top 6 of all time. Very specific there with top 6. So I'm actually going to be putting out a video in the coming days on just the insane start that Luka Doncic has had so far this season, and also just the insane start to his career, given the fact that he's only 23 years old and he's dominating the league at such a young age. What I will say though is, way too early to be making these types of claims. You never know what could happen as it relates to injuries. Players just suddenly falling off for no reason, that could happen, or being in situations that they're just not being utilized to their strengths and their fullest on the roster that they're currently on. There can be a host of reasons for why a player doesn't succeed as much as their talent illustrates, but based on what we know of Luka, how he has shown up thus far in just his young career, there's no doubt in my mind that he will cement himself among the all-time greats when all is said and done. Top 6 though? I mean, that's a pretty big feat for one to reach. You're talking multiple championships that would need to be won, MVP awards, scoring titles, multiple All-Star and All-NBA selections, other total career stats and accolades, showing up well and dominating in the playoffs. A lot of factors that have to be added to his resume to put him with the likes of guys like Michael Jordan, LeBron James, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Magic Johnson, Kobe Bryant, etc. Next, we've got Daniel Dedivas. No teams in the Southwest or Northwest divisions will be able to get past the first round of the 2023 playoffs. So let's have a look to remind everyone which teams are in these divisions, because I can hardly remember myself who is in what division. I just think in terms of Western Conference and Eastern Conference. I mean, I see 2 teams right away that will, without a doubt, at least make it past the first round. At least one of these teams will anyway, being the Dallas Mavericks and the Memphis Grizzlies. Both teams made it past the first round last season. The Mavs making it all the way to the conference finals, and the Grizzlies, who potentially could have gone and taken out the Warriors had Ja Morant not gotten injured in that series. And then I honestly wouldn't rule out the Blazers, Nuggets, or Timberwolves to make it past the first round. The Blazers have Damian Lillard back, Nuggets are fully healthy again with Michael Porter Jr. and Jamal Murray. And the Timberwolves, yeah, I have my doubts about them, especially with the slow start that they've had so far, but they do have one of the strongest starting lineups in the NBA. They could turn it on come playoff time. Obviously, not all these teams can advance to the second round, but to say none of them will make it past the first round, no, that's a stretch. And I'd be curious to hear your rationale for why you think these teams won't make it to the second round. Let's do a couple historical ones. We've got Mr. Clean, who says Bill Laimbeer is the best defender since he was able to shut down the best player and would be able to top players now like LeBron, KD, Steph, and Giannis. Wow. This is a smoking hot take, and with all due respect to you, Mr. Clean, probably one of the worst that I've seen. If you're saying Bill Laimbeer is the best defender ever, then you are sorely mistaken just because he was physical and committed hard fouls, go for cheap shots, get in fights as a means to stop his opponent, does not classify him as a great defender. I'm not saying he was a bad defender, because in many ways he actually was solid on defense and a decent rim protector, but let's not sit here and act like he would commit hard fouls on other teams' best players is because he couldn't stop them otherwise by normal legal defense, and he could get away with it then because the NBA wasn't as strict as they are now when it comes to flagrant fouls and trying to injure other players. And most certainly Laimbeer would not be able to shut down all the players you mentioned. Keep in mind that the talent pool back in Laimbeer's day was far less than what the NBA is today, which made his defense look even better. He's not stopping the likes of LeBron, Kevin Durant, and Giannis. Come on now. Another historical one, SFerg23. Will is the most overrated player of all time. Well, I think it's easy to say that guys who played before most of us were even born and there isn't as much footage of them from their time to assess their play, it's easy to call them overrated when they're still being talked about to this day. And while I agree with some saying that maybe guys like Bill Russell were overrated because of all the championships he got in an area where there were only less than 10 teams in the NBA, Russell also had more talent around him than someone like Wilt Chamberlain. Bob Cousy, another player you might consider overrated compared to today's NBA. Honestly, even Larry Bird, who was surrounded by Hall of Famers his whole entire career, won 3 titles and is still considered consensus top 10 player of all time among most fans. Some even believe that he's a top 5 player of all time. But for Wilt Chamberlain, sure, he played in an era where the talent across the board was pretty weak. Sure, he didn't win that many championships, only 2. Sure, he played when there was no 3 seconds in the key, so he could cherry pick in the paint and get tons of rebounds and easy buckets that way. But regardless of the era, he absolutely dominated during his tenure. The guy averaged over 30 points and 23 rebounds for his career. The guy averaged 50 and 25 in one season alone. 50 points and 25 rebounds. He was ahead of his time with his play and on another level, and I would argue with his size, physique, and footwork that he actually would still be a great player in today's NBA. Not saying he would be at the level where he's averaging 50 points and 25 rebounds, but still a top big man in the NBA. And because of his dominance in his era, it's why he'll always remain an all-time great. And while yes, he might be slightly overrated among the rest of the all-time greats, but I would not consider him at all to be the most overrated player of all time. Next, we've got ADog00. Draymond Green is not a Hall of Famer. That's one of the bigger debates right now, after I believe it was Zach Lowe who came out with an article about whether Draymond Green was indeed a superstar in his own right or just a product of being in a great system that was perfect for his skill set. And while I agree, had Draymond been drafted to a different team or didn't spend his career with the Warriors, he likely wouldn't have become the player you see today. He still would have been a great player because he plays hard, is an incredible defender, is very versatile, but he likely wouldn't be an all-star level player without the perfect system around him of shooters and the need for an elite level defender. And if he's not on the Warriors, it's hard to see him winning multiple championships on another team depending on which team he was drafted to. And without the all-star selections, the championships, and other accolades that he's been able to amass over his career, yeah, he likely isn't a Hall of Famer. But the fact of the matter is, he was drafted by the Warriors. He was a part of one of the greatest dynasties and being one of the better players on that dynasty. He does have 4 championships, 4 all-star selections, 2-time All-NBA, 7-time All-Defensive Team player, also including a Defensive Player of the Year award. And because he has all of that, he's going to be a surefire Hall of Famer. And this is coming from someone who isn't even a Draymond fan at all. I just know the level of requirements it takes to make it into the Basketball Hall of Fame, which isn't as stringent as other sports are, and Draymond Green fits those requirements despite the fact that maybe he was just fortunate enough to be drafted into a perfect environment that utilized his skills to the fullest. I'll end it there with this edition of your NBA Hot Takes. I'll try to do more of these hot take reaction videos occasionally, but I generally prefer doing more in-depth content. Let me know what you guys think of these types of videos. Feel free to put your hot takes in the comments below. Be sure to subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.